have our next speaker who will be joining us virtually via a Zoom call. And this person, he likes to call himself, I'm not the one calling him now, he likes to call himself an accidental entrepreneur. That is because he is a cybersecurity specialist and also an entrepreneur. He deals with secure software, with Internet of Things, and he has participated in many open source projects, including and not limited to EXPLIOT. So do we have Mr. Aseem Jakhar? I would like us to also welcome people who are joining virtually with a round of applause so they know we're here for them.
All right. So I'll share screen. I'll share my screen, but I'll need some kind of a audio feedback that my screen is visible. Yes. All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me for the conference. I'm always happy to share knowledge. And since the name struck a chord with me, Cyber Starter Conference, always willing to help people who want to get into cybersecurity. So today I'm going to be talking about penetration testing, basically giving everyone ideas about how can you start your journey into penetration testing, specifically around Internet of Things or IoT, because that's the new in thing that has come. All right, so a quick intro about me. I run two cybersecurity conferences called NullCon and Hardware.io. I'm an open source security software developer, and I do a bunch of talks and trainings at various conferences around the world. All right, let's start. So first I'll talk about the challenge and then how we try to overcome the challenge, and then a message to everyone here who is interested in IoT on what are the different ways you can start, and then a couple of things that we have worked on which people can freely use to increase their knowledge and experience in IoT penetration testing. All right, so first and foremost, the challenges, if you look at how we used to deal with cybersecurity in pre or a couple of decades back, when it meant securing or pen testing the infrastructure, meant typically looking at these client desktop machines. There were servers in the infrastructure like FTP, HTTP server. There were firewalls and networking devices, and that was pretty much about it when you were supposed to do security assessments for network for the network infrastructure. Surprisingly or fortunately or unfortunately, things have changed now. So when you talk about doing a penetration testing for an infrastructure, regardless of what the infrastructure is, typically you will have these different interesting devices within the infrastructure which typically are new to people, and it gets difficult in terms of getting inside the infrastructure. So things are changing. Whether or not you know about your infrastructure, it's pretty much a guarantee that there'll be a lot of devices which even the infrastructure owners will not be aware of. You have access control systems, you have cameras, you have temperature sensors, thermostats, building management systems, all being connected into the corporate infrastructure, and that is causing different challenges of its own. And one of the problems with this, from a security perspective, good for penetration testers, is that these typically these devices, the attack surface is huge. It's not just like you are just doing penetration testing for let's say a mobile application or a web application. If you look at these Internet of Things devices, they are not just one technology but a combination of different technologies. Like take any Internet of Things device, any device you can think of, a smartwatch, a smart camera, a thermostat, you will pretty much have cloud analytics and cloud storage for that device. You will definitely have a mobile application for the product. The device itself is a hardware. The device runs firmware, which might be Linux, which might be bare metal, which might be any kind of firmware. The device might have different radio protocols like BLE, Bluetooth, Zigbee, Z-Wave, wireless HART, you name it, and there are tons of radio protocols which are used by these kind of devices now. And then there are new IoT protocols which typically aid automation. So you can do machine to machine communication, you can do a lot of simple communication. So these are not the traditional protocols that are used over the internet for your traditional communication like HTTP and so on. And the other problem is the vendors or the companies who are making these devices are not the manufacturers for everything. So typically what they will do is, and the very simple example, a common example is a car. Now, if you look at a car is is one of the most complex distributed computing system that I've seen, and all of these systems are created by third parties. If you look at Mercedes or BMW or Tesla, none of them manufacture everything on their own. So what they do is they procure a lot of stuff from OEMs or third party manufacturers, and then they combine everything and create their own product. So this causes a lot of problems in terms of vulnerabilities getting inside your product. uh, uh, and then the security testing itself is a complex challenge because the attack surface is so huge. you know uh, if you are doing a penetration testing for an IoT device, as I mentioned, because of the huge attack surface, you will have to look at n number of different things, and that's where the real challenge starts. So we also learned the hard way around 8-9 years ago. I started my journey into IoT security research, and we thought that how difficult would it be. So we were getting ready for doing assessments now, and we thought, see, the process of security testing remains the same regardless of the interfaces or the attack surface. You will have to create certain test cases for the attack surface, but more or less the ideas remain the same, uh, which is true to an extent if you have the hacker mindset, or the mindset to look at things in a different way on how would you go about bypassing a certain technology. That remains the same. And we were sure that given thrown any product, IoT product on us, we will beat the shit out of it. uh, and then we got our first assignment to do penetration testing on an IoT product, and this is what happened. There were so many different interfaces for the product that we ended up looking at each interface, figuring out which hardware tool works for which interface, which open source we can use, which commercial solution we can use. And and uh, and then once we were done with that, the next product that we had to test had a completely different interface. So we basically ended up looking at different interfaces, figuring out different things, wasting a lot of time. And that's when we realized that things could have been better. There are certain things that we could have done which would improve the efficiency for penetration testing. So what I will do here is that I will leave you with some of the important things based on the attack surface. If you would like to go ahead and learn about it, there is a lot of information available. It's just that the information on the internet is not structured enough. So if you're looking at starting penetration testing, I think the first thing is to break down the scope of your learning and your knowledge, and what exactly do you want to achieve. So if you look at IoT, there are different components, as I mentioned: cloud, web, mobile, firmware, hardware. That's not where it stops. basically when you're starting, you can't learn everything on your own. So you have to pick and choose certain areas where you will excel first, and then move on to the next. So if you look at cloud security and web security, they are pretty much commoditized and standardized. Even mobile security to an extent, mobile, you have tremendous amount of research and white papers and videos available on the internet on, how do you hack cloud, how do you hack web applications, how do you hack mobile applications. But the problem starts when we are dealing with the mobile devices, the underlying operating system, and these IoT devices, which have a hardware, which have a firmware, which have a radio. So, and that's where it starts to get confusing on how, okay, how do I start my journey into studying hacking of these devices. So that's where I suggest that you pick one topic up and keep on breaking it down into smaller scope. So for example, I've given a very basic example. Let's say you want to look at firmware. Within firmware, you will have a full-fledged OS, real-time OS, or bare metal code. Now, all in full-fledged, you might have Linux, you might have Windows, you might have Android, iOS. Uh, on RTOS, you might have free RTOS, you might have VxWorks, you will have plethora of different real-time operating systems. And then in bare metal, it's as many as chips there are available, there will be bare metal code. So you need to keep on going to the lowest level where you reach kind of a leaf in the tree, and then you study that, then go up back, and then look at, okay, what are the other things that I can study on, and that's how you will reach up to the top, and where you can change your scope to now look at certain things. So even in hardware, there are different things. If you look at radio, there are different things. You can't learn radio pen testing in one day. You need to fix on what you want to learn first. So let's say in radio, you want to learn Bluetooth first. Then you go ahead and look at Bluetooth protocols, look at Bluetooth low energy protocols, look at the attacks that you can do. And all of this information is available on the internet. It's just that you have to structure your learning according to what exactly do you want to learn. So if you look at mobile, I've given very few links here. I'm sure there's a lot of information. This is just what I have done and what I know, what my friends have done. So if you want to learn mobile application, for example, one of the first things you would do is look at OWASP mobile top 10 vulnerabilities, try and understand each of the vulnerabilities and how you can use them to attack different applications. For that, I had many years ago, I had created an application called DeFi Android, which basically has 13 challenges, which teaches you basics of what are the different vulnerabilities in an Android application. The same way, one of my friend called Pratik, he created an application for iOS called DVIA. You can pretty much do the same thing, and that's how you will start your journey into mobile. You will figure out new things that are coming up, new applications for learning. On the firmware side, as I mentioned, there are different things. Do you want to focus only on Linux or real-time operating system or bare metal? And that is what will decide which are the different tools you will use, and which are the things that you will have to learn. So for example, there are open source tools like firmware analysis and comparison tool, which is great for Linux based firmware. There is Firmadyne, which is a great emulation for Linux firmware, automates a lot of things. There is Kemu, which is a general purpose emulator for ARM code. You can utilize that. Then there are certain other frameworks, emulator frameworks like Unicorn and Chilling. These are all open source frameworks that these frameworks will allow you to emulate and analyze either ARM code or MIPS code or x86 or AMD 64 code, regardless of whether it is a Linux binary or whether it is a bare metal code. It will look at raw instructions and try and emulate those instructions. One of the interesting things that you need to, or important things that you need to have for firmware analysis is knowledge of reverse engineering different assembly language formats. So for that, there are a couple of tools like Ghidra, Radare 2, which are open source. There are some proprietary tools as well, like IDA Pro, and typically you would use these to start your learning journey. I will share this presentation as well with the organizers so that they can put it online and you can then download it and use the links. On the hardware side, there are different things again that you can do with the hardware. So one of the first thing is you would want to try your hands on general purpose small devices. If you are completely new to hardware, I would suggest you look at Raspberry Pi, because it's like a Linux OS device, but there are certain things that it can do which your desktop cannot do. Then there are Arduino devices. Then there are specifically built system on a chip devices which have Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and other functionality, which you can use to create your stuff. So you can buy these development boards from online providers, and you can program them yourself. Uh, there is something called as a debug port scanning for hardware. Typically similar like software port scanning. This is to identify debug ports on the hardware, and one of the tools that we have on our website is called Bus Auditor. There's another tool by a very famous hacker called Joe Grant. He has this very nice tool called JTagulator for that. Once you get to know these tools, understand, then you will figure out your way into looking at YouTube videos specifically for debug port scanning, for example, and that will give you a path to understand what exactly is the purpose of these debug port scanners, and what to what extent you can hack using debug port scanners. Then there are multi-purpose hardware tools. Like we have our own called EXPLIOT Nano. There is Hydrabus, and there are a lot of others. For typically, when you look at hardware, you will see different memory chips. You would need some kind of a tool to read or write data to that chip. So one of the famous tools is TNM 7000. And again, once you start reading about it, then you will figure out what is the importance of this tool when I am doing hardware hacking. On the CAN side, if there are folks who are interested in learning, automotive security, there is a very nice tool called IC which is basically a simulator for a car, where you can use CAN tools and see the effects of those CAN. So you can send CAN commands, read CAN communication, and see the effects on a simulated car. Very nice tool for people who are interested in learning automotive security, or specifically CAN protocol. On the radio side, again, there are a lot of different things. For Bluetooth, there is a very famous tool called Ubertooth One, which is basically a general purpose Bluetooth sniffer, analyzer, and then there are software tools like PTLE Juice. There is Exploity Framework, which I will talk about, which we created for the same reasons that of the problems that we faced. Then there is, for Zigbee, there is Zigbee Auditor, which again, this is our proprietary tool. There are some other tools as well in the market, so you don't typically have to look at only this. The idea is that there are tools available. It is just that I'm trying to make it easy for you to identify the tools, so that then you can go ahead and start your journey in a typical path. Uh, for general purpose radio analysis, there is a very nice software come hardware. It's called software defined radio. This is a very generic radio analysis system, where what they've done is they've taken the modulation demodulation that used to happen, or analysis that used to happen on the hardware, up to the software layer. So that's why it's called software defined radio. And GNU Radio is a very famous open source tool for that. So what it does is it does all the processing for the radio or RF in the software, and then it needs a general purpose hardware to transmit or read the radio communication. And for those general purpose STR tools, you have HackRF, which is an open source tool. You also have Lime STR, which is also a nice hardware tool. And then you have a lot of other tools. This is very interesting from the perspective that this takes you to a generic, this is a generic framework. And on top of this framework, you can write analyzers for any kind of radio protocol. So if radio is of your interest, I would definitely suggest that you look at GNU radio. And there are a lot of videos available on how do you go about using GNU radio, starting from how do you analyze or how do you capture FM data to doing more complex stuff. All right. So from our side, we've always been trying to help the community, because when I started my journey in cybersecurity, it was very difficult for me then. That was like 20 years ago now, and there was not much information available on the internet. So it was very difficult to find like-minded people. So, and that was one thing that was always on the back of my mind, was to, once I know something, I will try and create something for the community, so that they don't have to face the same problems that we did. So one of the things that we did was we created a lot of blog posts for IoT security, which we compiled into a book. And this book is freely available on our website. You can go ahead and download this book. It talks from very basics to and touches different parts of IoT devices, thereby giving you an understanding of what exactly is Internet of Things and how do you go about pen testing different aspects of IoT. The next is an open source framework called EXPLOIT, which we created. And as I mentioned, the reason was same, very simple, that we had a lot of problems that we faced in terms of having a single framework available to pen test different aspects of these hardware devices or IoT devices. So what we did was we started creating an open source framework. And again, the source code is freely available. There are a lot of some videos available on our YouTube channel as well on how do you go about using it. And as of now, it can do a lot of things. It can, you can analyze BLE communication. You can analyze an IoT protocol called MQTT. You can do industrial protocol read write like Modbus. You can even use CAN read write and fuzz testing. You can use it for medical protocols like DICOM. You can use it for Zigbee. There are a lot of things that it can do, right from IoT protocols to radio protocols to actually hardware protocols. So, and this is freely available online. If you can download it directly. If you're familiar with Python, you can install exploit directly on your machine with pip install command. And the documentation is also on the website. It's very easy how to download. And it's a very nice simple interface. You get a command line, and then you can run all the commands and learn on your own. But before starting your journey into pen testing, I would highly recommend this keynote talk at one of our conferences by a very, very nice person, an entrepreneur, Harun Mir. He's from South Africa. He gave a talk on a lot of things in terms of how do you go about streamlining your learning, or why do some people are not able to uh, learn to their expectations, or basically learn hacking to their expectations. So I would recommend that you watch this keynote talk. uh, and one of the some of the things that I really hear from people who want to start into pen testing or security in general is, and I've listed some of the reasons here, And in the last slide, I will give you an answer for all of this. So, things like, I don't know where to start. I don't have enough funds for studying cybersecurity. I don't have enough funds for research. I don't have access to these tools. Um, I don't have devices to research on. My college or my company does not give me the opportunity to learn pen testing. Online courses are too expensive. Nobody wants to give pen testing job to a fresher. And some more examples of how the world is trying to conspire so that you cannot learn pen testing. Now there is only one solution to all of these problems, and that is, you will have infinite reasons not to do something, but there is no reason required to do something. And I have been through all of these similar problems. It's not that I'm a superhero. I have blamed everything on my fate. I've blamed everything on companies. I've gone through the same till the point where I realized that it's just me. It's not the environment that controls me. If I really need to learn something, you know there is everything is available on the internet. So I think if you want to really get into something, I think the easiest and the simplest way is to pick up one specific topic, and then just just go deep into it. So don't look at everything. If you look at cybersecurity as a whole, you will pretty much get scared. There is forensics, there is malware analysis, there is binary exploitation, there is IoT pen testing, there is web cloud. You will really get confused. So, and I would suggest, don't take advices on what should I do. And that's the worst thing you can do to yourself. So just pick your topic and go deep into it and create something new. Like, create a tool that does something. Yeah, all right. I think that's about it from my side. Thank you, and stay safe. You can reach me on this website, and my email address is here.